This is Jeremy from the Artifacts Forge with an in-depth video explaining how to use vector brushes with text in Affinity Designer. Does this sound familiar? You found a brush and it looks great when drawing, but as soon as you apply it to type, it looks awful. The brush is massively distorted, overstretched, and there are loads of gaps. I've created this video to help solve these issues, to explain why some brushes work with text and others don't, and to help you create some amazing looking lettering with brushes. And this includes the complete method I used to create the type that you're seeing now. To head straight to this section, skip to the 15-minute mark. I'm going to give you some handy tips and tricks as well as solving some common issues. And by the end of the video, you'll be confident using vector brushes with text in Affinity Designer. I'll start with a few general do's and don'ts. As a general rule, the less texture a brush has, the better it will work with text. This doesn't mean you can't use a textured brush, but you'll need to know how issues can either be solved or avoided by using a more suitable brush. You also need to pick your font wisely. Try to avoid overly complicated fonts and ones which feature loads of texture. Fonts with rounded corners like Cooper generally work well with brushes, as you'll experience less brush distortion on fonts without sharp angles. That said, there is an advantage to using fonts with right-angled corners. You can control the corner radius to solve the brush distortion issues. I'll explain more about that later. For all examples in this video, I'll be using a font called Big John. As you can see, it's a simple font with no texture and right-angled corners. Technically, all vector brushes can be applied to type, but many will look bad. Most brushes may look great when used for drawing, but just don't work with text. I'm going to show you how to identify which brushes will work well with type. And I'll start by showing you some examples of brushes which aren't suitable, then I'll explain why. So I'm going to apply one of the free brushes which comes pre-installed in Affinity Designer. It's from the oils set. To apply the brush, simply select a piece of type and click one of the brushes from the brushes panel. As you can see, the brush looks awful on the text. It's overstretched on the outer corners, compressed and distorted on the inner corners, and we have gaps where there's no brush stroke at all. Before we look into why this is happening, I want to explain a few basic principles about applying brushes to type. These are that after you've applied the brush, you can easily change the size of your edge by adjusting the stroke weight, and you can also change the colour by changing the stroke colour. Next, I want to show you why this brush looks so bad on the text. To do this, I'm going to open the brush settings by double-clicking the relevant brush icon on the brushes panel, like this. When we look at the body settings, we can see that the brush is set to stretch, and this means that the brush stroke is stretched along the entire length of the item that it's applied to. In this case, that's each letter. And because we have some blank space at the end of the brush material, we're left with gaps on each letter. Before we move on and search for a better brush, I want to show you what happens when we change the body setting to repeat. As you can see, in the preview, the brush material is now repeated along the stroke. When we apply the adjusted brush to the type and click the Scale with Object tick box on the stroke panel, the look improves. We still have loads of gaps and distorted corners though, so this brush is definitely not right to use with type. So we now know we need to look for a brush which repeats its material along a path rather than stretching it. I'm going to try another of Affinity's free brushes. This one can be found in the pencil set and is called Classic 2B. When I apply the brush to type, there are still one or two gaps on each letter where the brush strokes end. You'll notice the P has two gaps and the other letters have one. This is because P is constructed using two paths, whereas the other letters were made using one. We also still have this distortion on the corners. So using this brush is a big improvement, but there are some things we still need to fix. I'll focus on fixing the gaps first. So I'm going to explain why there are gaps so you know how to choose a more suitable brush. I'm going to open the settings for this brush. The body has been set to repeat and the brush has been created so that the brush material repeats seamlessly along the stroke, similar to how a repeat pattern works. So this is a big improvement on the previous brush. But the gaps have been caused because the brush has a head and tail with some space at each end. You can tell if a brush has a head or tail if the brush extends beyond these red lines here. You could manually paint over the gaps, but I'm going to show you a better, quicker workaround later in this video. But first, I'll show you how to choose the right brush and avoid the gaps in the first place. From the examples I've shown so far, we now know we're looking for a brush which tiles seamlessly along a path rather than stretching and has no head or tail. And luckily, Affinity Designer has some of these pre-installed. If we look at the pencils set, there are a number of brushes with "for closed curves" written at the end of their names. These are the brushes we're looking for. I'm going to apply Classic 2B for closed curves to our text, and I'm going to increase the stroke weight so you can see the details more clearly. And as you can see, we have no gaps. When I open the brush settings, you can see that body is set to repeat, and the brush has no head or tail. We know this because the brush doesn't extend beyond the red lines here. The maker of this brush has also ensured that the brush material tiles seamlessly. Helpfully, Affinity has named its brushes so you know they're for closed curves, but I'm giving you a thorough explanation so you know how to identify a good brush for type, even if it's not been named in this way. I'm going to draw a line using this brush with the brush tool. As you can see, the ends of the brushes are flat with no head or tail, making the brush less good for drawing independent brush strokes, but perfect for closed shapes such as type. So we've solved the gaps issue, but we still need to remove the distortion on the corners. As I mentioned earlier, one way to avoid corner distortion is to use a font which has rounded corners. But if you're using a font with square corners like this, you can add rounded corners using the corner tool. If you're unfamiliar with the corner tool, I have a video explaining how to use it. You'll find the link in the description below. When I try and use the corner tool on live type, it doesn't work. So we need to convert the type to curves first. This means that your type will be converted to editable curves, and you'll no longer be able to edit it with any of Affinity's type tools. So you may want to create a copy of the type before converting to curves. To convert your text to curves, select the type and head to the Layer, Convert to Curves menu. When we check the Layers panel, we can see that each letter has been converted to a separate curve. And now I can use the corner tool to round the corners and reduce the distortion. You may also want to adjust the stroke weight too. Reducing the corner distortion is a balance between corner radius and stroke weight. There's no hard and fast rule to getting this right, as every brush is different. But with some tweaking, you should be able to get a balance you're happy with. Expanding your type to curves opens up further editing possibilities not available to live type. You can use the contour tool to move the edges of the type. The contour tool will work with live type, but not if brushes are applied. And this is why we need to expand it. This is particularly handy when using brushes, as they generally make the type wider. The downside with using the contour tool to shift the edge inwards is that it may distort the brushes at the corners. But as I said in the previous step, you can adjust the stroke weight, corner radius, and the contour offset to get a balance you're happy with. If you'd like to learn more about the contour tool, check out our tutorial. You can find a link in the description below. Another advantage with expanding your type to curves is that you can use the reverse curve button to reverse the direction of your brushstroke. I'll come back to that later, as it doesn't make much of a difference with a uniform brush like this pencil one. Earlier, I mentioned there's a workaround to close gaps if using a brush with a head and a tail. To demonstrate this, I'm going to create a new piece of text, convert it to curves, and apply a brush from the dry media set. This is another brush set which comes pre-installed with Affinity Designer. So you can see more clearly, I'm going to make the fill transparent. Because I'm working with expanded text, I can manipulate individual nodes, so I'm going to break the curve where one of the gaps shows and overlap the ends where the head and tail of the brush show. I'm selecting the end node using the node tool. You can identify the end node because it's the red node. Now I'm going to hit the break curve button. And as you can see, I can now move individual nodes to overlap the brushstroke ends. And as I do this, I'm holding the Shift key, which keeps the lines at right angles. This technique works particularly well with a very solid brushstroke like this, but less well on lighter brushstrokes where the overlap may appear darker than the rest of the brush. I now want to highlight a common problem. I'm applying this dense charcoal brush for closed curves to some type, but it looks overstretched. You'll only get this issue when using brushes which repeat a tile along a stroke. To fix this issue, simply click the Scale with Object checkbox on the stroke panel. Earlier, I mentioned that I'd revisit the Reverse Curve button. I'm now going to show you how it works and fix another common issue at the same time. To demonstrate this function, I needed a brush with a definite direction and couldn't find one in the free Affinity sets. So I'm using an Artifacts Forge brush. This is a floral brush from our Fineliner Type Decorators toolkit. You can see the complete back by following the link in the description below. The Reverse Curve button can't be used with live type, so I've already expanded the type to curves and added some rounded corners, and now I'm ready to apply the brush. Select your type with the node tool. When the button is clicked, the direction of the brushstroke should reverse. But in this instance, when I click, only the brushstroke on the first letter reverses. I'm not 100% sure why this happens, but I suspect it's caused by Affinity Designer thinking that the stroke direction runs one way on the T and in the opposite direction on the Y, P and E. There's an easy fix though. Simply select the individual expanded letters, then merge them using the Add button. As you can see, I can now reverse the brushstroke direction at the touch of a button. The Reverse Curve button can also be used to fix another common problem. If you apply a brush with one flat edge to type, it will sometimes appear as if the brush hasn't been applied. I suspect this is caused by the same issue I encountered in the previous section. I'm going to use another Artifacts Forge brush to demonstrate. This is a zigzag brush from our Affinity Edge Essentials set. A set of rough, organic, zigzag, wave, petal and other useful edge brushes. When I apply the brush, it looks like nothing happens. But when I convert the type to curves and reverse the direction of the brushstroke, the zigzag appears on the T. When I merge all the letters using the Add button, the other letters reveal their brushstrokes. I'm going to quickly tidy up the effect by adjusting the stroke weight and adding some rounded corners. A question we often get asked at Artifacts Forge is, can you add brushstrokes to the fill or the centre of type? While this is not possible in a one-click scenario, like applying brushes to the stroke, there is a workaround which allows the user to crop multiple brushstrokes using a typed letter. To do this, start with a typed letter or word and draw brushstrokes above it, so you know the strokes will cover the entire letter or word. To demonstrate, I'm using one of the free watercolour brushes which comes pre-installed with Affinity Designer. I'm varying the stroke colour as I draw to create a gradient-like effect, and I'm setting the stroke's blend mode to multiply. Now I'm going to group the brushstrokes and set the fill of the text to transparent. To crop the brushstroke group, drag the layer group icon into the letter icon on the layers panel. Be sure to drag into the name part of the icon. If you want to add a different edge to the text, you can apply a brush before you apply the mask. I'll skip back a few steps and show you how. I'm using a rough edge brush from Artifacts Forge's Affinity Edge Essentials brush pack. I'm expanding the type and moving the edge with the contour tool. The corners look pretty good in this instance, so I don't need to adjust them. This time I'm dragging the text icon into the brushstroke group icon. And there you have it. Before I show you the complete hand-drawn style lettering process, I wanted to quickly recap the main points from the video. Number 1. Work with simple fonts. Ones with rounded edges are good, but right-angled corners give you more flexibility. Choose your brush wisely. Check the brush settings to make sure the brush is suitable for closed curves. 3. Expand your text to curves for greater editing possibilities. 4. Adding round corners and adjusting the stroke weight are great ways to fix brush distortion. And 5. make use of the contour tool and reverse curve button to further enhance your text. Now, as promised, I'm going to show you how to create this hand-drawn style lettering. I'm going to be using a number of resources to do this. Some of the free brushes which come pre-installed with Affinity, 2 of Artifacts Forge's brush sets, and 2 sets of one-click texture styles, which are available free from artifactsforge.com. Links to these can be found in the description below. If you don't have the paid brushes I'm using, you may be able to use other brushes instead. I'll start by creating the letter T. I'm again using the free Big John font, which is available via the link below, and I'm using the artistic text tool to create a letter at 150 points. I'm converting the text to curves and setting the fill color to grey. The RGB reading for this is 76, 76, 76. Next, I'm going to apply a fine liner outline brush from the Artifacts Forge's Fine Liner Brushes and Patterns pack. As you can see, this brush was created for closed curves. I'm adjusting the stroke weight to 5 points. The corners look undistorted with this brush. This is because it's a fairly thin brush and has little texture. But I'm going to add rounded corners anyway because the shape needs to work with another brush later. Now I'm duplicating the T shape. And I'm going to use the contour tool to move the edge inwards on the top copy. I'm now going to use the Erase Blend mode to make the overlapping sections of the 2 shapes transparent. To do this, I'm selecting the upper shape and choosing Erase from the drop-down menu on the Layers panel. And as you can see, using the contour tool has caused a tiny bit of distortion on the brush, so I'm going to use the corner tool to compensate. I'm now going to create another duplicate of the original T shape. And as I'm going to apply a brush to this shape, I don't need the fill colour. The brush I'm going to apply is from the Artifacts Forge's Fine Liner Type Decorators toolkit. It's the same brush I used to demonstrate the reverse curve button earlier on. I'm going to set the Layer Blend mode to Erase again to make the overlapping areas visible. And I'm going to use the contour tool to move the edge inwards. It's now time to check for any corner distortion and adjust the corners to fix it. I'm now duplicating the bottom T shape and using the contour tool to move the edge outwards and create an outline. The final step for this letter is to use the brush tool to draw some asterisks to fill the centre of the type. The T is now finished, but I'm also going to add a textured overlay and paper texture to the type, but I'll do that after finishing the other 3 letters. Now I'll create the letter Y. I'm using the same font and expanding it to curves. I'm going to apply one of the free brushes to the type. This one comes pre-installed with Affinity Designer and it can be found in the dry media set. It's called Dense Charcoal for closed curves. I'm reducing the stroke weight to 9 points and then setting the fill colour to transparent. The corners look good with this brush and there's minimal distortion, so I'm just going to tweak this inner corner with the corner tool. I'm going to duplicate the Y shape. I'm going to set the fill to grey and remove the brush stroke. Now I'm duplicating the upper Y shape, moving the duplicate to the bottom on the Layers panel and setting the fill to the grey colour. Next I'm going to hit the return key on my keyboard to bring up the Move Duplicate menu. I'm going to move the copy -45 pixels horizontally and 45 pixels vertically by entering the values here. I need the middle Y curve to erase the shape below it, so I'm setting the layer blend mode to erase. I'm now using the node tool to edit the shape to give it a 3D appearance. As I have snapping enabled, the nodes easily snap to the nodes on the other Y shape. I'm making another duplicate of the top Y shape and colouring the fill grey. Then I'm going to use the contour tool to move the edge inwards. The final step is to duplicate the second Y curve again, shift the edge inwards and apply another brush to it. I'm using another brush from our fine liner brushes and patterns pack. The corners are a little distorted, so I'm going to adjust them with the corner tool. And now I'm on to the P letter. We're using the same font again and converting the type to curves. I'm recolouring the letter and applying the fine liner brush to the edge, setting the stroke colour and adjusting the stroke weight, and fixing a small amount of distortion with the corner tool. Then duplicating the shape and moving the edge with the contour tool, and setting the layer blend mode to erase to knock out the overlapping sections. Now I'm making another copy of the P shape and switching to the Fine Liner Type Decorators Toolkit brush set. I'm then applying the diamond shape brush to the shape and setting the blend mode to erase. Then removing the fill colour and then I'm moving the edge inwards with the contour tool. I'm then going to adjust the corners with the corner tool to fix the distortion. The final step on the P is to use the brush tool to draw some loops. And I've just noticed a tiny bit of brush distortion on the white section, so I'll quickly fix that by adjusting the corners further. Now for the final letter. And as you guessed it, we're using the same font and converting the type to curves. I'm now applying the dense charcoal brush to the edge and then rounding the corners. Next, I'll duplicate the E shape and remove the fill and apply another one of the fine liner brushes. This one is a hand-drawn zigzag brush. I'm going to set the blend mode to erase so we can see the brush stroke. Then I'm going to reduce the stroke weight and move the edge inwards using the contour tool. Next, I'm duplicating the lower shape and applying the fine liner outline brush to it. Then setting the stroke weight and the blend mode to erase. I'm now shifting the edge inwards with the contour tool, then duplicating the shape again. I'm setting the blend mode back to normal and moving the edge further inwards with the contour tool. Then for the final time, I'm duplicating the shape and removing the fill colour. I'm then applying a dashed fine liner brush and moving the edge outwards. I'm now reducing the stroke weight. It looks like the dash stroke needs a little bit more space, so I'm going to shift the edge on the black shape a little more and increase the stroke weight to make the dashes bigger. And I've just realised I forgot to colour the letter grey like the others, so I'll quickly recolour the elements. I've added all the letters together in one document, and now I'm going to use a couple of free Artifacts Forge products to add a realistic watercolour paper and texture overlay. First I'll add the paper texture. I've already loaded the Artifacts Forge's Infinite Canvas Creator into the Styles panel. This free product features loads of seamless papers and artist canvases, ideal for a huge range of art styles. To use one of the textures, simply create a vector shape below your design and click one of the style icons on the panel. Then rescale as required using the gradient tool. The overlay texture can be applied in the same way. This is from our Tileable Textures pack, featuring loads of seamless organic textures. Download it via the link below. I'm adding this above the type and setting the blend mode to erase. And there's the finished type. I hope you now have a greater understanding of how brushes can be used effectively with type. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to follow the links below and check out the products used in this video. And follow our channel for more tips and tricks. Thanks for watching.